The courtroom fell completely silent, as Amina signed the divorce papers that would destroy her own heart. Everyone believed she had betrayed the man she loved. 3 months later, he married her own best friend. But no one knew, she divorced him to keep him alive. A ruthless criminal gang gave her only one choice. Lose your husband, or watch him die. 5 years later, one forgotten letter changed everything. When he learned the truth, it was already too late. 10 years earlier. The city of Lagos woke before sunrise, its streets already alive with the sound of buses, market vendors, and children rushing to school. Inside a small classroom painted with faded blue walls, 31-year-old Amina Okoro stood before her students with a warm smile. She wasn't rich, but everyone respected her. To her students, she wasn't just a teacher, she was hope. Every afternoon, after school ended, Amina walked home carrying a worn leather bag filled with notebooks waiting to be graded. She dreamed of opening a free school for children whose families couldn't afford an education. One rainy evening, her life changed forever. As she waited beneath a bus shelter, a black luxury SUV suddenly stopped nearby. The driver stepped out to inspect a flat tire. Moments later, another car sped around the corner, nearly crashing into the stranded vehicle. Without thinking, Amina rushed forward and pulled a little girl out of danger. The child's father quickly ran toward her. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice shaking. "Thank you. You saved my daughter." His name was David Mensah, one of the youngest business owners in the country. Despite his wealth, he carried himself with surprising humility. Over the following weeks, David found excuses to visit Amina's school, donating books, computers, and sports equipment. At first she thought he simply wanted publicity. But she soon realized he always stayed after everyone had left, just to spend a few minutes talking to her. Their friendship slowly became love. Unlike the glamorous women who surrounded David at business events, Amina never cared about his money. She reminded him to call his aging mother. She encouraged him whenever his company struggled. She celebrated his victories and comforted him through every setback. For the first time in years, David felt truly understood. One evening beneath the giant mango tree outside Amina's modest family home, he knelt on one knee. "Amina Okoro," he whispered, holding out a diamond ring, "before I became successful, I dreamed of finding someone who loved me, not my bank account. Will you marry me?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes. Their wedding became one of the happiest celebrations the village had ever seen. Although David owned luxury homes across the country, Amina insisted they continue living simply. Money should improve lives, she often told him. It should never change hearts. Inspired by her words, David began funding schools, clinics, and scholarships throughout rural communities. His business expanded faster than anyone expected. Magazines called him Africa's fastest rising entrepreneur. Whenever reporters asked him about the secret behind his success, he always smiled. "My wife." But success attracts more than admiration. It also attracts dangerous people. Late one evening, while David attended an international business conference, Amina noticed a black motorcycle parked outside their home. The same motorcycle appeared again the next morning. Then again outside her school. She tried convincing herself it was only coincidence. Until an unmarked envelope appeared on her doorstep. Inside was a single photograph. It showed David leaving his office only hours earlier. Across the picture, written in thick red ink, were chilling words: "Leave him, or bury him." Amina's hands began trembling. She immediately called David, but the call failed. Moments later, her own phone rang. A distorted voice spoke only one sentence. "If your husband remains your husband by the end of this month, he'll die." The line went dead. That night, Amina didn't sleep. She sat alone in the darkness, staring at their wedding photograph while tears silently rolled down her face. She wanted to tell David everything. But deep inside, She already knew the terrifying decisions she might have to make. The next morning, Amina walked into the police station carrying the threatening letter. The officer on duty glanced at it for only a few seconds before shaking his head. There is no name, no fingerprints, no evidence. We can't protect someone from an anonymous threat. She left feeling more terrified than before. For the next 2 weeks, the nightmare grew worse. Everywhere she went, someone seemed to be watching. A black SUV followed her school bus. Unknown numbers called her phone every night. Fresh roses appeared outside her front door with black ribbons tied around them. Then one evening, a small package arrived. Inside was David's expensive wristwatch. It was covered in what looked like blood. Beneath it was another message. Next time, it will be his body. Amina screamed. Only hours later David returned home smiling after signing the biggest business contract of his life. I have wonderful news, he said happily. We are expanding into 3 more countries. He wrapped his arms around her, but she couldn't smile back. Instead, she quietly buried her face against his chest, silently praying she wasn't about to lose him forever. That night, after David had fallen asleep, Amina made the hardest decision of her life. She called the number that had been threatening her. I'll do whatever you want, she whispered. The distorted voice replied immediately. Divorce him. Amina's heart stopped. And disappear from his life forever. If I do, he leaves. If I don't, you'll be choosing his funeral. The call ended. For hours she sat alone on the living room floor staring at their wedding photograph. Every happy memory became another knife in her heart. She remembered their first meeting in the rain. Their wedding vows. Their dreams of growing old together. Everything was about to end. Not because love had died, but because love demanded a sacrifice. The following week, Amina became someone David no longer recognized. She stopped answering his calls. She avoided his hugs. She acted cold, distant, and impatient. David was confused. Did I do something wrong? He asked one evening. She forced herself to look away. I've changed. No, he replied softly. Something is hurting you. Tell me. She almost broke down. She wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to show him the threats. She wanted him to hold her like he always had. Instead, she lied. I don't love you anymore. David stared at her as though the world had collapsed beneath his feet. Amina. I've met someone else. The words nearly destroyed her as they left her lips. He stepped backward, unable to breathe. I don't believe you. You should. For the first time in their marriage. David cried. Weeks later they stood inside the family courtroom. Friends whispered. Relatives shook their heads. Reporters waited outside, hungry for gossip. Everyone believed Amina had betrayed the perfect husband. David signed the papers with trembling hands. When the documents reached Amina, her fingers refused to move. She looked one last time at the man she still loved more than life itself. Inside she was screaming, forgive me. Please hate me if it keeps you alive *** with tears burning her eyes. She signed. The judge officially ended their marriage. As Amina walked out of the courtroom, she heard David call her name one final time. She didn't turn around. Because if she looked back, she knew she would run into his arms. And the people haunting him would make sure neither of them lived long enough to regret it. Outside the courthouse, black clouds gathered over the city. Amina stepped into the rain completely alone. Across the street, the same black SUV was parked silently. Its engine started. Then slowly drove away. For the first time in months. The people watching her had disappeared. David was finally safe. But Amina had just sacrificed the only home her heart had ever known. 5 years passed. The world believed Amina Okoro had disappeared in shame after destroying her marriage. But while people judged her, she quietly rebuilt her life from nothing. She moved to a distant province where no one knew her name. Using every penny she had saved, she opened a tiny community school beneath a tin roof. She taught children whose parents couldn't afford uniforms, books, or even one meal a day. Every evening, after the students went home, Amina sat alone in the empty classroom. She would often take out her old wedding ring, gently hold it in her hand, whisper a prayer for David's happiness, then place it back inside a small wooden box. She never stopped loving him. She simply chose to love him from a distance. Meanwhile, David's life seemed perfect. His company became one of Africa's fastest-growing businesses. Business magazines called him the billionaire who rose from nothing. Then, only a year after the divorce, he married Mensah, Amina's closest friend. The newspapers praised them as Africa's newest power couple. When Amina accidentally saw their wedding photo in a newspaper stand, she quietly folded the paper, smiled through her tears, and whispered, "Asterisk, at least he's alive." Asterisk, she walked away without buying it. She never blamed him. As the years passed, David slowly noticed something strange. Mensah cared more about luxury than love. She organized expensive parties but never visited his sick mother. She spent millions on jewelry while refusing to donate to the schools Amina had once inspired him to build. The kindness that had filled his home disappeared. One rainy afternoon, David visited his late mother's house to sort through old belongings. Inside an old wooden cabinet, he discovered a sealed envelope with his name written in Amina's handwriting. His hands trembled. The envelope had never been opened. Inside were copies of every threat Amina had received. Photographs of armed men following him. Police reports. Phone recordings. And one heartbreaking letter. "David, if you're reading this, it means the people who wanted you dead are finally gone. You once asked why I stopped loving you. Asterisk, the truth is, I never did. Asterisk, they gave me one choice, lose you as my husband, or lose you forever. If I had told you the truth, you would have fought them, and they would have killed you. So I chose to let the whole world believe I was the villain. Please don't hate yourself. Living without you was the price I willingly paid to keep you breathing. Your happiness, even without me, was always enough, forever. Asterisk, Amina." Asterisk, David collapsed onto the floor. The letter slipped from his shaking hands. Everything suddenly made sense. Her cold words. Her silence. Her refusal to look back in the courtroom. She had never betrayed him. She had saved his life. Overcome with guilt, David immediately hired investigators. Within weeks they uncovered the truth. The criminal syndicate responsible for the threats had been dismantled years earlier after a nationwide investigation. Amina had carried the burden completely alone. David drove for hours until he finally reached the small village where Amina's school stood. Children laughed beneath colorful trees while she patiently taught them to read. She looked older now. The years had left gentle lines around her eyes. But her smile remained exactly the same. David slowly walked toward her. The children ran inside for lunch, leaving them standing face to face for the first time in 5 years. Without saying a word, David fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I believed everyone except the woman who loved me most. I married the wrong person. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Please, come home." Amina's eyes filled with tears. She gently helped him to his feet. Then she smiled the same peaceful smile he had fallen in love with years ago. "I forgave you a long time ago, David." His face lit with hope. "But forgiveness," she continued softly, "doesn't always mean going back." She looked toward the children playing outside. "They need me now. And you have your own life to repair." David lowered his head. For the first time, he understood that love could survive. even when a relationship could not. Before leaving, he donated millions to expand Amina's school into the largest free education center in the region. He never asked for ownership. He named it the Amina Hope Academy. Years later, thousands of children graduated from the school that one woman's sacrifice had made possible. People often asked Amina why she had never remarried. She would simply smile and answer, "Real love isn't measured by how long someone stays beside you, sometimes, it's measured by what you're willing to lose to keep them alive." And every child who walked through the gates of Amina Hope Academy became living proof that one quiet act of selfless love can change generations forever.